Hello, everybody. My name is V the Victim, and this is my GG Season 4 Episode 2 review. Now, coming out of the last episode, I survived the banning, and I have the Amulet of Choice. If you get out of a banning successfully, you can take the Amulet of Choice and you can choose to not be picked by the person voted in by the tribunal. But outside of that, there's not any way to get the tribunal not to put you in, unless you're in the tribunal itself. The best way to do that, then, is to make them not want to put you in for another reason. I really had no other choice but to choose sabotage and to pick someone who was in the tribunal with it. Now, I didn't really want to pick Bodhi because, I think that sabotaging him probably wouldn't change the way he plays the game at all because he's a cactus in the desert. He does his own thing. So that leaves Settled and it leaves Torvesta. Now, Settled is a friend of mine. I like the guy a lot. And I think that despite him voting for me in the first tribunal, if the other two wanted to vote for me, he wouldn't have had a choice. And so I wasn't really upset with him or anything. And I figure that I don't really want to burn that bridge and hurt that relationship by picking him, especially this early in the season. So that leaves Torvesta. Now, Torvesta, last season, I eliminated him in a banning. Our alliances were rivals the entire season that we were both in. And so he was kind of just the easy choice because it's a way to make a statement, sabotage a strong player, show that you're not going to just take getting thrown into a banning by the tribunal lying down. And I don't make a new enemy, which is key. I think in this season, where being in the tribunal is going to basically make you an enemy automatically because you have to publicly reveal your vote, it's best to make no new enemies. And a little beef may carry over between seasons. Torvesta and I already have clashed in the Gielinor games. So again, just the easy choice. I sabotage Torvesta. Now in this challenge, the sabotage is pretty strong and Torvesta goes out really early. But this season, it doesn't really matter that much if you lose a challenge. It really only matters if you're top 3. So I'm not sure how effective the sabotage actually is in getting somebody eliminated. I don't think that there's that much power in the sabotage to get someone eliminated, so you wouldn't just want to blindly use it on the person you want out unless you think that you're going to get the tribunal to put them in afterwards. But it was pretty strong in this challenge. We only got 4 brews, and I believe Torvesta lost an entire one of them. And he really didn't have much of a chance. Even if he was really good, -1 brew, I don't think he would have gotten top 3. So yeah, the sabotage I think went off really well. It put him out early. It showed that the sabotage could be pretty powerful. And anyone with individual aspirations to end up in the tribunal every week would absolutely not want to get sabotaged. So hopefully that means they're not going to want to pick me. Now, another thing I did this week to try to protect myself is I sent out a few DMs. Every season in GG, there's definitely a good amount of DMing going on behind the scenes. You'll just see like solo missions, portrait popping up in the top of your Discord or Settleds or whatever, and they've got a proposition for you, or they just want to say they're a friendly face and hello and how are you doing? And this season, of course, no exception. Couple of DMs are always flying back and forth, and I went ahead and sent some DMs to people I consider strong players, people who I would be open to working with, who I think maybe would be open to working with me. So the best examples here, Settled, who, although he put me in episode 1, I decided to extend an olive branch and say, look, I know that you're going to win your banning if you get put in. So I don't think there's any point in you putting me in, because I'll do the same, and I don't plan to put you in if I'm in the tribunal. Just try to get a little insurance. And I sent the same thing to a few players. The other most notable one being Solo Mission. And both of them said the same thing. And I think we talked a little strategy. Now, this season is less heavy on strategy, but I think that the general idea is don't make people hate you when you don't have to. Which probably sounds like basic logic, but in a game like GG, you definitely can do small things that will make people hold a grudge and come after you later. So my goal, try to stay relatively low profile, try not to be in the tribunal, but also try to be safe. Because if you're not in the tribunal, you're not forced to put people in, and they're not going to have a grudge against you. But at the same time, you need to have some kind of insurance that you're not going to just be shoved into the banning every week from the tribunal. And for me, that's going to be this aggressive play to sabotage anyone if they put me in the banning. And I said this publicly, right? So I am talking about using my sabotage, and I say, look, I'm sabotaging the tribunal. Someone who put me in is going to get a sabotage. And if I get put in again, I'm going to come back and I'm going to sabotage somebody that put me in again. So don't do it. And so between that and trying to smooth things over a little bit in the DMs with people, I'm hoping that I can make pretty much no enemies and kind of slide forward under the radar while also keeping myself safe with that secret insurance policy in the background of, having friends in high places, you might say. As for the challenge itself, I think it was pretty sweet. An Ulm tank test, scaled up with a lot of people, a lot of contestants. So Ulm hits pretty hard. There are a lot of people who can get targeted with random mechanics. Just a cool challenge overall. Now, we only did have 4 brews. I think that Soup thought we were going to last a lot longer than we did with 4 brews. But with the mage and range constantly changing, the special attacks, it's not easy to not take a lot of damage. As for my performance, I was pretty happy with it. I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to be in the tribunal, but I also didn't throw the challenge. I just was kind of hanging out in the back, seeing how well I would do, getting back in Ulm's room for the first time in, I'd say, literally years. And yeah, I felt pretty good about it. The goal was basically just avoid the crowd, because the crowd is going to have burn with me on them. They're going to be running the head and turning it your way. So I actually had a really good strategy, and I hang out in the back of the room most of the time. I avoided a ton of damage. I think I actually was doing the best in the challenge up until shortly before I died and was eliminated outside of the top 3. Unfortunately, I was the one unlucky person who got targeted with the red falling crystal attack. And so with that special attack on me, the immediate Soup says afterwards was to trade somebody. And I'd taken a few hits recently. I'd not brewed up enough. And so when I traded settled, 1 crystal hit me and just barely overkilled me. So had I brewed up more beforehand or traded literally anyone else who wasn't going to instantly open a trade screen with me while I had this red falling crystal attack, I would have survived, and I almost definitely would have been top 3. But again, silver lining, not being in the tribunal if you don't think you're going to get put in is pretty big. And I was very confident that I wasn't going to get put in immediately after having won the previous week. I mean, I guess the tribunal could decide we're just going to use V the Victim as like a battering ram, and we're going to keep putting him in every single week until he either eliminates everybody and it's time for the final, or someone eliminates him and we can move on to somebody else. But that seemed really unlikely. So realistically, the challenge felt pretty low pressure. It was really fun and chaotic, and it was really short too. I think if you watch Soup's stream, he'll have mentioned this, that it was only like a 4-minute long or 5-minute long challenge because we only had a few brews and everyone was getting destroyed. Really short challenge, but it was a lot of fun, and it was a cool one. I hope to see more like raid-based challenges in the future because I think there's a lot you can do with them. So coming out of the challenge, we have our episode 2 3-man tribunal that is settled for the 2nd week in a row. Roidy and Eevescape. No huge surprises, although I will say big props to Eevescape for coming in top 3 with extremely high ping, because yeah, I think he was playing on like 290, 300 plus ping from Australia to the UK. So a lot of respect for that. And basically, I'd talked to Settled and Solo Mission and a couple other people. I think I messaged Eevescape as well. And the general idea was we're not going to put in someone we feel is really strong all around in all aspects of the game, because they'll pick someone weaker than them and they'll win and come back. That makes 2 other choices possible. You either choose someone who's decent at the game, who you think probably could be a threat some of the time, or you choose someone who's really, really, really good at a specialized area of the game, PvP. Now, PvPers kind of get the short end of the stick in GG every single season, because if you're really good at PvP and not that good at anything else, there aren't going to be that many PvP challenges, and people are really worried about you. Because when you're good at PvP, it's just so different from the rest of the game that people who don't PvP a lot, or even people who do PvP a lot and they're just not amazing at it, they're just like decent or good, are just going to get demolished by somebody like West Ham or Dino. So if you're worried that maybe down the road you'll get put into a banning 1v1 against West Ham and it's a PvP banning, you might pick West Ham. And that's pretty much exactly what we saw. Settled, Roydy, and Eviescape all agree 3-0 on voting in West Ham. And I do think it's a pretty good call. I do think that West Ham is the best PvPer in the games, especially Tribrid. So we see him get thrown in. And West Ham kind of has the same idea, like he's not going to pick Bodhi, so he chooses another PvPer. This makes a lot of sense. This is a really smart choice from West Ham because he's better than Skillspecs, who he chose at PvP, but he also could maybe beat him at other aspects of the game. So for West Ham, really smart pick here of Skillspecs. I think it was incredibly intelligent, and it ends up being a PvP banning, of course. I don't think either of them expected this. I think they didn't expect a PvP banning. So when it came out, West Ham had to be confident. Like, you definitely pick him as the favorite. But the fact that they had to click everything and couldn't use F keys, very relevant. They're both fighting their muscle memory, their habits, and it was really fun to watch. I think the first fight, Skillspecs only lost by, I want to say, right around 50 HP. So it was an insanely close fight. And if West Ham hadn't gotten a couple of really clutch D-bolt special attacks, then yeah, I mean, Skillspecs could have taken this one. And momentum is big, like, you know, confidence and everything in PvP. It's possible that we could have seen a 2-1 or 2-0 in favor of Skilly. But as it was, West Ham really clean in the second fight compared to Skillspecs. Beat him by, I think, like over 100 HP. And he takes the 2-0. He's coming back, and he also is thinking of revenge, and he chooses the Amulet of Sabotage. And we see, once again, that it's not great to be in the tribunal, because if the person you put in comes back, they're going to have a chip on their shoulder. And who are they going to go for? Well, their first thought gotta be the people that put them in there. He's got Settled, Roydy, and Eviescape in his crosshairs for the coming week, and we're gonna have to wait until then to see what he actually ends up doing with that Sabotage, and of course what the Sabotage is gonna be. And as for my position in the games going into the next week, well, I feel pretty good. West Ham, chip on his shoulder, not directed at me, so I'm feeling good there. I think that it's still early enough in the games that I can count on people like Settled and Solo not to vote me in from the tribunal because they expect me to win and come back. And really, it's just going to be a matter of feeling out exactly how this format is going to play out. The most important thing right now is to be seen as a big threat, which is crazy. I think Soup did such a good job with the design of this season, because if you're a big threat and people think you're going to win bannings, they won't put you in. But at the same time, you're kind of teetering on the edge, where if you're a big threat, at some point, it feels like you're a ticking time bomb for getting thrown into a banning. And in a banning, you really never know. It could be something very coin flippy, and it's scary. So the safest thing to do is end up in the tribunal every single week. And if you can do that, like Settled has so far, you are putting yourself in a crazy good position. But if you're not in every week, maybe that 1 week you're not in is the week you get eliminated. So I think the safest bet is the low profile strategy, because you can't count on winning every single week. And going forward, if you're a pretty good threat and people are worried about what you're going to do if you win the banning and come back, then you're hopefully going to be in good shape. So that's where I see myself going into week 3, and I will see you then. Thanks for watching.